La Llorona. La Llorona, or the Weeping Woman, is one of the most famous and terrifying ghost stories in Mexico. According to the legend, the Weeping Woman had fallen in love with a wealthy man, but he rejected her when he found out that she already had 2 children. In a moment of madness, she drowned her children in a river close to the rich man's home, but when he rejected her a second time, she threw herself into the same river. Her madness and evil brought her back to haunt the world, weeping endlessly and looking for her lost children. She appears as a woman in white, often by roads or bodies of water. One of our head staff members has a story about how La Llorona visited their family. They had a maid under their employment who was sent to draw water from a well in the countryside town where the family owned property. She went out just before dawn, when it was still dark out. As she walked, she heard the street dogs barking. The maid turned to see what they were barking at and saw the shape of a woman coming toward her in the road. The woman had a veil on her face, and she was floating off the ground. Even over the sound of the dogs barking, the maid could hear the sound of the veiled woman weeping. The maid dropped the buckets of water and ran toward the house. By the time she'd arrived safely, her hair had been streaked white from terror. Guard your children close when the weeping woman walks. She wants children and will happily take yours. La Plancha. Another spectral woman with a tragic backstory, La Plancha, which means the Iron Lady, is the ghost of a nurse who was once in love with the doctor at the hospital she worked at. After he rejected her, the nurse went insane from heartbreak and began discreetly killing the patients under her care. She killed quite a few people before somebody noticed the high death rates of those she was attending to. Scared of being caught, she took her own life. Supposedly, her restless spirit still wanders the earth. Dressed in an outdated nurse's uniform, the Iron Lady stalks the lonely corridors of her hospital, seeking poor souls to attend to. The child who is afraid of the dark. In the Santa Paula Cemetery in Guadalajara, Mexico, there is a grave that was once lit by torchlight every night for years. If the torches were not kept alight, the child in the grave would crawl out and wander the darkness. The story goes that the child was deathly afraid of the dark and would cry if left alone in a darkened room. One night, the lights in his home went out, and he died in terror. They interred him, but every night the grave would be dug up as the child's spirit would be afraid to be left alone in the cold, dark ground all night. In the end, it was decided to keep the graves lit by torchlight so the child couldn't escape and the child's fear wouldn't consume others.